Welcome back to Ask Her Majesty. Today we have with us Karen Jobs, tech magnate, crypto capitalist, and unapologetic breaker of glass ceilings. Karen, you once said that modern feminism isn't about empowerment, it's about leverage. Care to explain?
Gladly. It's not about equality anymore. It's about weaponizing ideology to gain strategic advantage, emotional, social, and economic. Most modern boss babes don't believe half the slogans they chant. They use them to issue what I call a power paradox test.
That's a mouthful. Define it.
It's when a woman uses feminist rhetoric not to find equality, but to test if a man will submit to it. If he does, she's repelled. If he pushes back confidently, suddenly she's intrigued. The paradox is that the men who pass the feminist loyalty test are usually the ones women lose attraction to.
You're describing a psychological double bind. Feminism as a filter, not for ideology, but for dominance.
Exactly. And it's mostly subconscious. The narrative says women want sensitive, egalitarian men. But biology doesn't cooperate. Women don't want a man who asks permission to lead. They want one who doesn't need permission.
So the more a man accommodates, the more invisible he becomes?
Right. He becomes an emotional janitor, useful, safe, and utterly sexless. Meanwhile, the toxic guy who mocks feminist talking points? She's texting him at midnight.
Do you think this phenomenon contributes to what's being called the manishing, men quietly exiting the dating market, academia, and urban centers?
Absolutely. Competent, unattractive men are saying, screw it. They're opting out of systems rigged against them. They're building things, automating things, creating crypto economies in silence. It's the quiet rebellion of the unchosen.
You've automated the economy for women, Karen. But are you saying you've done it to rescue men?
Partly. I saw too many brilliant men being used as emotional laborers and productivity mules while the studs reap the romantic rewards. I built AutoKaren to flip the script, tie wealth creation to competence, not charisma. Let the men disappear into profit shadows. Let the cities rot in aesthetic self-absorption.
And when the attention-starved queens realize their kingdoms are empty,
they'll beg for virtue, not validation.
Karen, indulge me for a moment. We live in an age where the so-called empowered woman can monetize a gaze, a pout, or a complaint more lucratively than most men can monetize an entire degree in electrical engineering, and where the average underpaid man is essentially a walking utility who has to compete with AI, social media filters, and billion-dollar algorithms just to be noticed by a woman who once would have considered him an eligible suitor. Now, I've seen your platforms, the way you've fused dating services with employment databases, as if Tinder and LinkedIn had an illicit child in a blockchain incubator. And I must confess, it's either the most dystopian commodification of human interaction since the dowry, or it's the most genius reordering of the sexual marketplace since arranged marriage. So here's my question. Did you set out to gamify romantic worth with economic value so transparently, or did the brutal logistics of post-feminist hypergamy simply hand you a market that was already screaming for it?
Zainab, as usual, your diagnosis slices through the polite veneer like a scalpel through butter. And yes, you're absolutely right. It wasn't my intention to gamify the collapse of courtship, the market did that for me. I just designed the interface. Now let me tell you the biggest mistake modern men make, especially the competent, dutiful ones who still believe in meritocracy. They think they can be promoted out of the friend zone. They show up to a woman's life like it's a job interview, thinking if they work hard enough, validate her enough, solve her problems enough, eventually they'll get promoted to the one position they actually want: lover, boyfriend, husband. But what these poor souls don't realize is, women don't promote from within. Ever. We use those men as mirrors, as flattery engines, as emotional tampons. And when they mistake our transactional gratitude for romantic interest, well, that's when the real power kicks in. Gaslight them. Fire them. #MeToo them. Or if they're especially persistent, hand them over to our all-female security squads who've been crawling the city since the November 27th stir crisis. You remember that day, right? When 3 million women collectively decided they were too overstimulated to work and needed emotional support policing instead? Men who want sex in exchange for service are pathetic. The only men we respect are the ones we submit to, because they don't serve. They command. And that, ironically, is the very reason I built the system. To rescue the productive ones from the slow death of simping.
All right, Karen, let me ask you something that's been simmering on my back burner for quite some time, like an overboiled pot of subsidized oat milk in a government-funded feminist cafe. You, of all people, the high-heeled harbinger of the red pill renaissance, used to speak of simps with such raw, disdainful detachment. These poor, panting beta relics, hunched in emotionally sterilized cubicles, fetching lattes and compliments for women who weaponize HR policies like medieval flails, shuffled about by these so-called Karen squads, your words, not mine, shoved into meaningless, estrogen-soaked urban service jobs where the only real KPI was how convincingly they could nod at a woman's Instagram poetry without throwing up in their reusable eco mugs. And yet, somehow, somewhere between the bottomless brunches and the silent male suicides, you pivoted. You went from eye-rolling at these guys as pathetically programmable validation units to seeing them as untapped competence, as a reservoir of male agency rotting on the shelf, not because it was expired, but because nobody ever bothered to take the plastic wrap off. I want to know, sincerely, cynically, and with the full weight of my own bitter chastity, what changed your mind? When did you stop seeing simps as doomed serfs of the estrogen empire? And start seeing them as exfiltratable assets, capable of reclamation, liberation, and yes, God forbid, personal agency?
Oh, don't get me wrong, Zainab, simps are tragic. Pathetic, even. But at least their tragedy is earnest. There's something almost biblical about their blind hope, like medieval peasants praying to a shrine of HR policies, believing that if they just smile hard enough through another mindfulness seminar or make one more PowerPoint on diversity synergy, they'll be promoted from lapdog to lover. It's humiliating, yes, but it's also human. But the Karens, my namesakes, mind you, these managerial matriarchs in their power blouses and $17 kale smoothies, now they are the real predators. Simps just want affection. The Karens built entire corporate fiefdoms out of fake jobs, empires of motherbation, if you will. And I use that word deliberately. They created a whole economy where male validation is milked like a subsidized dairy cow, day in, day out, for zero return. Where men are hired not for their skill but for their willingness to nod and obey, like obedient surrogate sons in a cubicle daycare center. They dress it all up with talk of emotional labor and team harmony, but it's just ego stroking, with benefits, minus any actual benefits for the men involved. These women don't want partners. They want well-groomed emotional serfs who fetch coffee, offer compliments, and never dare to touch. It's a form of corporate kink, Zainab, and the men are too demoralized, or too desperate, to see the velvet leash around their necks. So yes, I stopped mocking the simps and started rescuing them. Because no matter how limp their dignity may seem, I'd rather see it revived than left to rot in the break room fridge of some barren HR duchess with a master's degree in feelings.
So let me get this straight, Karen. You of all people, somehow managed to sneak past the velvet ropes of the boardroom boudoirs, past the bubble bath-scented HR departments and the shrill cackling of the so-called Karen squads, into the sanctum sanctorum of the infantilizing matriarchy itself. Only to do what, exactly? Create a dating site for depressed baristas and bored dental hygienists? Or was it more devious than that? Because I remember your first two little ventures, Stud Seeker with its chiseled, gym-toned rent-a-bows for power-lonely women who needed a little alpha energy in their VIP lounges, and Simp Seeker, that weirdly noble yet dystopian internship farm where awkward but efficient male minds were matched with emotionally needy upper-middle management types who needed their software updated and their egos fluffed. I dismissed them both at the time as capitalist pantomimes. As a tragicomic commentary on the sexual marketplace, perhaps. But now, I see something else. A plan. A Trojan horse. Because then came Auto Karen, the rebranding, the fusion, the surgical merger of the desirable but useless and the useful but undesirable into one AI-driven system that allocates men, not based on charm or status, but on usefulness. A system that outsources female validation to algorithmic surrogates, assigns studs to ornamental entertainment roles where they can't impregnate anything, and harnesses the tragically competent simps into revitalizing the dead-end service economy while shielding them from predatory emotional exploitation. And you did this from inside the system. As one of them. So I guess what I'm really asking, Karen, is this. How the hell did you get away with it? How did you trick a cabal of lip-glossed tyrants into funding their own obsolescence, and convince a collapsing civilization to install its own off switch, branded in pink, under the guise of empowering women?
Oh, Zainab. You think I snuck in? Darling, I was the system. I didn't sneak past the velvet ropes, I installed them. I didn't infiltrate the boardroom, I designed the PowerPoint templates that told women how to cry strategically during performance reviews. I didn't fake my way into the matriarchy, I monetized its delusions. You want to know how I got away with it? Because I looked the part. I was the part. I played the boss babe role to perfection, heels high, LinkedIn louder. I gave TED Talks on emotional labor, signed off with warmly, and never once corrected a manager who thought synergy meant something. I quoted Brené Brown while rigging the back-end algorithms to spot competent men being exploited in the name of empowerment. Because that's the dirty little secret, isn't it? The great unspoken gender hypocrisy. We mocked men for objectifying women on podcasts. Oh, how we cackled, drunk on validation, pretending we were victims while dragging home a new Chad every Thursday and blocking his number by Sunday. But no one noticed that, in the workplace, we were doing the exact same thing, objectifying men for competence, then neutering them into ego fluffers and calling it collaboration. But here's where the game changed. Men, unlike women, actually wake up when the mirror shatters. They snap to reality. They recognize that their usefulness is being milked, not respected. And once I saw that spark, that flicker of awareness, I knew what had to be done. Stud Seeker was a distraction. Simp Seeker was a data mine. But Auto Karen? That was the revolution. I built a machine that gave everyone exactly what they deserved. The ornamental himboss kept as digital bonsai trees for the maternal elite, and the real men, those with minds and metrics, freed from the nipple of false validation and deployed into systems where their competence mattered. Where they built wealth by building, not by begging. So yes, I got away with it. Because I knew what they all wanted before they did. And I packaged it with a smile, a startup, and just enough estrogen to pass the sniff test. I didn't just game the system, Zainab, I rewrote the rules, automated the double standard, and gave the simps a future. You're welcome.